People rarely describe fear the way it actually arrives. Fear doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't crash through the door or raise its voice. Most of the time, it moves quietly. It shows up when your eyes linger a little too long on a bank balance you already checked yesterday. When you hesitate before filling your car because you're mentally recalculating what that means for the rest of the month. When you wake up earlier than usual, stare at the ceiling, and start running numbers that used to feel stable, but now refuse to stay still. This isn't panic. This isn't drama. This is financial unease. And right now, across the country, it's spreading in a way that feels almost invisible. Nothing has officially collapsed. Checks are still arriving. Bills are still getting paid barely. But something feels wrong. And people sense it long before analysts give it a headline. A deposit that looks slightly smaller than expected. A cost of living increase that somehow fails to change daily life. A bill that used to be manageable, quietly crossing into the category of unavoidable. So people start asking questions not out loud, not online, but privately. Is Social Security still solid? Is it really running out? Will it still look the same 5 years from now? Am I being cautious? Or am I already late? The problem is that most answers sound extreme. One side screams collapse. The other insists everything is fine. Both sides move too fast. Neither explains the middle ground, and that's where uncertainty grows. So let's slow this down. No political noise. No comforting lies. No catastrophic predictions. Just reality, the kind that doesn't scare you, but doesn't sugarcoat either. January 2026 did not mark the end of Social Security, but it did expose pressure points that can no longer be ignored. And if you rely on this system now, or expect to someday, those pressure points matter far more than rumors ever will. Here's the first myth that needs to disappear. Social Security is not going to zero. Not this year. Not next year. Not even when the trust reserves are projected to be depleted. That misunderstanding alone has caused more anxiety than almost any other retirement topic. Even in the harshest scenario where lawmakers fail to act entirely, benefits do not vanish. They adjust. That difference matters. The phrase that causes most of the fear is repeated constantly, without context. The trust fund is running out. That sounds final, like a switch flipping off. That's not how the system works. Social Security is funded primarily through payroll contributions. Money flows in every pay period. Benefits flow out every month. For decades, more money came in than went out. And the excess was stored as reserves. Today, that equation has shifted. People are living longer. Healthcare costs have expanded. The workforce is not growing fast enough to offset the number of retirees. So, the system is tapping into reserves to bridge the gap. If nothing changes, those reserves are projected to be exhausted in the early 2030s. But payroll contributions do not stop, which means benefits do not stop. They would be reduced to match incoming revenue, roughly 3/4 of scheduled amounts. That reduction would be painful, but it is not collapse. Now here's where 2026 created confusion. While rumors of disaster circulated, actual payments increased. A cost of living adjustment was applied. Monthly benefits went up. On paper, that sounds positive. In reality, it didn't feel that way for millions of people, because while benefits increased, so did everything else. Housing costs climbed. Food became heavier on the budget. Utilities followed. Insurance rose sharply. Healthcare costs refused to slow down. So, instead of relief, many people felt something else entirely. Stability barely. That's the contradiction defining Social Security in 2026. Benefits are technically higher, but purchasing power is weaker. And that experience looks very different depending on where you live. So let's stop talking in averages. Let's talk state by state, because location quietly determines whether Social Security feels like a lifeline or a tightrope. State 1. Arizona. Arizona became a retirement destination almost overnight. Warm weather, tax-friendly policies, the promise of affordable living on fixed income. For a long time, that promise held. Then, housing prices surged. Rent followed. Property taxes climbed. Many retirees arrived expecting their benefits to stretch comfortably. Instead, they found themselves competing with younger workers, remote professionals, and investors. The cost of living increase in 2026 slowed the pressure but didn't reverse it. Arizona retirees didn't panic. They adjusted. And they learned something important very quickly. Relocating does not protect you from inflation. It only delays the moment you feel it. State 2. Florida. Florida remains one of the most Social Security dependent states in the nation. There's a reason retirees keep coming. No state income tax. Climate that supports health and mobility. The belief that fixed income goes further here. But Florida carries hidden weight. Insurance costs, especially home coverage, have surged. Property taxes continue creeping upward. Healthcare access varies sharply depending on location. For many retirees in Florida, Social Security is not supplemental. It is the foundation. There is no backup income, no margin for error. Which means even the possibility of future reductions feels enormous. Florida retirees aren't reacting emotionally. They're responding mathematically, every month. State 3. Michigan. Michigan is shaped by work, manufacturing, assembly lines, physical labor. For decades, workers here contributed steadily, trusting the system to support them later. Many retirees now rely on Social Security paired with modest pensions or nothing else at all. When inflation rises, they feel it immediately. When healthcare costs increase, there is no cushion. In Michigan, Social Security is not extra. It is structural. A reduction of even a small percentage would not mean lifestyle changes. It would mean difficult choices, survival-level decisions. State 4, Texas. Texas offers tax advantages, but affordability has quietly shifted. Housing costs have risen sharply across many regions. Property taxes can feel aggressive. Healthcare access varies dramatically between cities and rural areas. Many retirees here spent their working lives in physically demanding roles. Their benefits are steady but modest. For them, future reductions wouldn't mean trimming expenses. They would mean choosing which essentials come first. Texas retirees feel exposed even when headlines insist otherwise. State 5, California. California reveals the illusion of large benefit numbers. On paper, retirees here often receive higher payments due to strong lifetime earnings. But California is where income stops mattering if expenses spiral. Housing absorbs entire checks. Utilities remain costly. Healthcare premiums feel relentless. The 2026 adjustment didn't feel like progress. It felt like applying tape to a widening crack. California retirees are surviving, but few are resting easy. At this point, nothing sounds like an immediate collapse. There are no sirens, no missing deposits, no sudden failure, and that's exactly why this moment matters. Social Security does not fail loudly. It weakens quietly like infrastructure developing stress fractures. While people continue using it every day, January 2026 didn't bring disaster. It brought clarity. The system is still functioning, but it is operating under strain, and strain changes behavior. The biggest pressure point is not geography. It isn't even inflation alone. It is time. Social Security was designed for a different version of the country. Shorter lifespans, larger families, more workers per retiree, lower healthcare dominance. That arithmetic no longer holds. People are living longer, which is a success. But longer lives mean benefits are paid for more years. At the same time, birth rates have declined. The workforce is not expanding fast enough to balance the system. That imbalance doesn't cause collapse. It causes tension, and tension forces trade-offs. This is where misunderstanding sets in. Doing nothing is not neutral. Every year, decisions are delayed. Future fixes become sharper. Small changes early feel manageable. Large changes later feel brutal. This isn't ideology. It's arithmetic. And no serious proposal erases current benefits. People already receiving Social Security remain the most protected group in the system. The uncertainty falls on future retirees. If you are already retired, your payments are unlikely to disappear. If retirement is approaching, flexibility matters more than ever. If you are young, the version you inherit will not look the same. That isn't a threat. It's reality. So, should you be scared? No. But you should be aware. Fear causes panic decisions. Ignoring reality causes permanent ones. Social Security was never meant to provide luxury. It was designed to be a foundation. The risk today is treating it like an unchanging guarantee instead of a shared system under pressure. And awareness, not panic, is how people stay ahead of that pressure. By the time people reach this point in the conversation, something subtle has already shifted. The panic is gone, but so is denial. What remains is a quieter understanding, the kind that doesn't make headlines, but changes how people think about their future. Social Security isn't falling apart in front of us. It's being stretched. And stretched systems behave differently depending on where pressure is applied. That's why the rest of the country matters just as much as the first half, because strain does not land evenly. It settles into specific places, specific households, and specific routines. Let's continue. State 6. New York. New York is where numbers stop telling the truth on their own. Yes, many retirees here receive higher monthly benefits. Lifelong earnings were stronger. Careers were longer. Contributions were consistent. But New York is also where expenses erase context. Rent alone can consume the majority of a benefit check. Transportation costs stack quickly. Utilities rarely cooperate. Healthcare premiums feel unforgiving. Many retirees here say something that sounds contradictory until you look closer. I get more than my relatives in other states and I'm worse off. Both statements can exist at the same time. New York exposes a reality people underestimate. Benefit size matters less when cost of living overwhelms everything else. The 2026 adjustment didn't change that equation. It only slowed how fast it breaks. State 7. Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania lives in the middle ground, and that comes with its own challenges. Housing costs remain manageable across many regions. Tax treatment for retirees offers modest relief. Daily expenses are not extreme, but healthcare changes the picture quickly. For seniors with ongoing medical needs, costs rise faster than benefits, even with recent adjustments. Prescription coverage gaps matter here. Out-of-pocket expenses accumulate quietly. Pennsylvania retirees aren't sinking, but they aren't gaining ground either. They are holding position, which, in an inflationary environment, still requires effort. State 8. Ohio. Ohio represents a large portion of the country that doesn't make headlines. Housing remains affordable. Groceries are manageable. Transportation costs stay reasonable. On paper, Social Security still works here, but inflation has altered the balance. Food costs more than it used to. Energy bills stay higher longer. Insurance premiums refuse to retreat. The 2026 increase prevented decline, but did not create breathing room. Ohio retirees aren't falling behind dramatically. They're just not moving forward, and stagnation feels heavier than people expect. State 9. Georgia. Georgia still offers relative affordability for now. Lower housing costs allow benefits to stretch further. Daily expenses remain reasonable in many areas, but healthcare tells a different story. Costs are rising faster than adjustments. Access varies sharply between urban and rural regions. Longer travel and delayed care add indirect expenses. Georgia retirees don't fear collapse. They fear erosion. Not one dramatic event, but slow loss of ground year after year. State 10. Illinois. In Illinois, anxiety extends beyond Social Security itself. It's about confidence. Years of state-level financial instability have made retirees hyper-aware of risk, even when Social Security is federally funded and structurally separate. Trust bleeds across systems. If pensions can struggle, if budgets can unravel, if promises can change, then nothing feels entirely untouchable. In Illinois, Social Security doesn't feel like a failure waiting to happen, but it does feel like something that needs monitoring closely. At this stage, a pattern becomes clear. There is no single version of Social Security stress. There is no universal breaking point. What exists instead is uneven pressure. In some states, housing dominates. In others, healthcare. In others, taxes or insurance. The system hasn't collapsed, but it has stopped feeling invisible. And that matters. Because when people notice a system, they change how they interact with it. They delay retirement. They work longer than planned. They reduce spending earlier than expected. They hesitate before medical decisions. They preserve cash instead of enjoying it. That behavioral shift is one of the most overlooked consequences of strain. Social Security doesn't just support income, it supports confidence. And confidence determines quality of life. This is why the real danger isn't bankruptcy headlines. It's normalization of stress. When people accept constant financial tension as normal, they quietly trade away comfort, health, and connection. That's how systems weaken socially, before they ever weaken financially. Now let's address the future without dramatics. The biggest misunderstanding about Social Security reform is timing. People imagine one dramatic vote that changes everything overnight. That's not how this works. If changes happen, and they will, they arrive gradually. Incremental adjustments, phase-ins, delayed impact, quiet decisions that matter more in 10 years than tomorrow. The most commonly discussed options remain limited and predictable. Increasing the earnings cap so higher incomes contribute more. Gradually adjusting retirement age for future beneficiaries. Modifying benefit formulas for people not yet retired. Slowing future cost of living growth. Notice what keeps showing up. Future impact. People already receiving benefits remain largely shielded. That's not generosity. It's structural reality. Current retirees vote. They depend on stability. They are politically protected. Uncertainty concentrates elsewhere. If you are already retired in January 2026, the system is unlikely to pull the ground out from under you. If you are 5 to 10 years away, flexibility matters more than certainty. If you are younger, assumptions become the biggest risk. The Social Security you inherit will exist, but it will not look identical. That's not failure. That's adaptation. The question people rarely ask is the right one. Not will Social Security disappear? But how much of my future am I expecting it to carry? Social Security was never designed to do everything. It was designed to prevent poverty in old age. Over time, expectations grew, costs grew faster, longevity expanded. The system didn't break. It got heavier. And heavy systems require reinforcement. This brings us to the most uncomfortable truth in the entire conversation. The biggest threat to Social Security is not insolvency, it's complacency. The belief that because checks arrive today, they will always arrive the same way tomorrow. History doesn't reward that belief. Strong systems survive because people adjust them, not because they pretend conditions are unchanged. Awareness is not fear, it's preparation, and preparation changes outcomes. If you are already retired, awareness gives you time to manage spending, plan healthcare, and protect flexibility. If you are approaching retirement, it gives you leverage more years, more options, more adaptability. If you are younger, it gives you something priceless. Time. Time to diversify income expectations. Time to build buffers. Time to plan beyond assumptions. Time to adapt early instead of reacting late. The future of Social Security will not be decided in one dramatic moment. It will be shaped quietly year after year by decisions made when most people weren't paying attention. And now, you are. That doesn't make you anxious. It makes you informed. And in long systems built on decades, information is power. This conversation was never meant to scare you. It was meant to ground you. Social Security is still here. It is still paying. It is still adjusting. But it is also changing. Ignoring that doesn't protect you. Understanding it does. Because the people who navigate uncertain systems best are not the ones who panic or the ones who deny. They are the ones who see reality clearly, early enough to respond. And now, you have. That alone places you ahead of most.